Hello, hello. Larson Halleck here, and welcome back to Manthropology. Today's show is actually going to be half anthropology and half history. That's what we need to do when we talk about the demographic bomb. What is the demographic bomb? It ties in with the dissonant ideas you see floating around the bad think parts of the internet. White genocide and electing a new people and all that. This is the idea that insert country here is ruled by a hostile elite that hates the common people and seeks to deal with the common people problem by deliberately importing a new bunch of people who will vote the way they want and be more pliant and thus to the liking of societal elites. Or perhaps the new arrivals will be used blatantly to punish the already existing population for some perceived transgression. According to the more conspiratorially minded, this is happening right now in Western European countries, the United States, Canada, and other countries that are by complete coincidence predominantly white countries, pointing to the refugees that may or may not be actual refugees, illegal immigration, and the fact that societal elites in all of those countries have expressed thinly veiled contempt for the majority population. Naturally, there are some who would disagree, arguing that the idea that a nation's government would hate its own people so much that they would bring in a whole new population just to screw with them to be complete nonsense. Now, I'm not going to decide whether or not this is happening right now. That is beyond the scope of this video. Instead, what I'm going to do is prove that the idea of the demographic bomb is at the very least feasible, this idea that one's rulers would sponsor and debate an invasion of your lands. And how can I prove that this could happen? Because I can discuss the times it has happened in the past. Yes, indeed, forced demographic change as a tactic of irregular warfare has been done in the past, most often by colonizers seeking to punish the uppity colonized who just don't know when to quit fighting back. To see examples of this, let us look at the British Empire, the gold standard of imperialism in its most glorious and terrible forms. Looking at the conquest of Sri Lanka, we can see an example of this before the fighting was even over. The British, you see, did imperialism the right way, unlike us dumbass Americans. Whenever possible, they used conscripts from other parts of the empire to fight for them. And if your conscripts happen to be from a hot-blooded warrior race that hate the people you're attempting to colonize, that's even better. Pacifying two birds with one stone. And thus we see a massive influx of Malaysian Muslims being sent to fight Sri Lankan Hindus and Buddhists. For you see, a 19th century Muslim, or a Muslim right now, hardly needs much provocation to murder a bunch of idolaters. But the problem is, those mercenaries will probably end up getting killed. In fact, Lord Autumnbottom is kind of hoping that they get killed so he can pocket the money that would have been used for payroll. And ultimately, the natives will regain their numbers. You can't ship every Malaysian to Sri Lanka, so what to do? Import in excess Tamils from India, of course. While there were some of this ethnic group in Sri Lanka beforehand, the British brought in a hell of a lot more as indentured labor, where they would ultimately form more than 10% of the population, or 20% if you lump them in with the native-born Tamils. Now, I don't know whether or not the British hoped to totally replace the rebellious Sinhalese with a placated group of people, or if they just did it to fuck with the Sinhalese to give them a new source of ethnic conflict that would hopefully last for centuries after the Brits had gone. But whatever it was they wanted to do, they achieved the second one. And in an oddly similar case, the British basically did the same thing to Fiji. In 1878, Governor Arthur Gordon, apparently no relation to the far more badass Charles Gordon, decided to bring in, you guessed it, Indian indentured servants for the same reason they did in Sri Lanka. And yes, I am aware that there was the option for repatriation, but guess what? Many of them didn't go back, and guess what else? There is still a large Indian population in Fiji, 37.5% of the population to be exact. And while there has not been large-scale civil war like with the Tamil Tigers, there are still clashes with the majority population, and Indo-Fijians still struggle with identity questions. To go from literally 0% to almost 40%, and correspondingly affect the culture, language, and demography of the nation you're being shunted into. That's what I would call a demographic bomb. And hey, it's not just the Anglos who did it. There's quite a few Indians, Chinese, and Malays in French Guiana to cite one example. So you can debate whether or not the demographic bomb is happening right now, but don't think it's impossible for it to happen, because it has been done in the past, and it just might be done in the future. This was a short video, but I think I said everything I needed to say. I'm Larson Halleck, and I appreciate humanity in all of its splendor. And now, a word from our sponsors. Hello, are you a fan of Larson Halleck and the Barbaric Gentleman? Of course you are, otherwise you wouldn't be watching. Would you like to help the channel grow? Would you like to help me out? If so, here's how you can. You can go to patreon.com/LarsonHalleck and join the ranks of these illustrious heroes. You can also go to www.paypal.me/LarsonHalleck to also donate some money. You can also buy my book. The Patreon, the PayPal, and the link to my book are all found in the video description. You can also follow me on Twitter or on Instagram. I no longer advertise my Gab because Gab sucks. Otherwise, enjoy, keep watching the videos, and spread the word.